much of today has been on the existing use cases. It's been wonderful. We have learned so much, but now it's time to almost shift gears and begin to look ahead. You are going to meet now a very interesting person. He is the outgoing, sadly, having a new wonderful job, of course, but the outgoing digital change director at MediaHuis in Antwerpen. And you are about to meet a man who is deeply involved in cutting-edge digital transformation in newsrooms across Europe. He follows trends, he sees what's next, and he does it with a wonderful curiosity, which makes him awesome. Please welcome Ezra Eeman.
Thank you. Quite the introduction. I hope you still have a bit of brain power left after such an amazing day full of presentations. I promise I don't be too technical. I try to take maybe a bit more a bird's perspective on all of this. Those who know me know that I'm a change director at MediaHuis. And MediaHuis is a publisher, fairly big publisher, I would say, currently across 5 countries in Europe. We have 40 titles in our portfolio. And I'm mainly responsible for bringing our newsrooms into the digital future, whatever that may mean. And of course, looking into how AI influences that future is part of that. But perhaps I'm also known by some of you because I write a weekly newsletter called WayFinder, and some of you might follow that. And that's really very much about looking at how the media landscape is evolving, what are some of the dynamics that come into play. It's a fast-moving landscape, and it is, as you can see, the landscape is almost impossible to track. This map was made by a VC company in the US, and it has almost 1,400 companies on it. It was released in February, and it was obsolete the moment it came out. So it is actually impossible to track it. And if you look very closely, you will see that, that is also the case in terms of numbers. Downloads for AI-powered apps have increased by 1,500% year over year, with the number reaching nearly 20 million in March. And in-app spending, it has also increased, clocking almost $3 million in March, a massive 4,184% increase year over year. And yes, if you look carefully, we already mentioned it, that really covers the hype curve. So you could say we are maybe currently at the top of the hype curve, maybe not yet, but with influencers screaming that you can get rich overnight with ChatGPT and other doomsayers saying that probably we will end the world with ChatGPT, we might well be on top of that curve. And that's, you can wonder, is it actually as disruptive as we think? Might we all find ourselves in a few weeks and a few months in that disillusionment that always follows the hype curve? So how do we actually navigate this new paradigm? Maybe we can take a few lessons from natural pathfinders. Let's take a few steps back. Gain some higher ground, observe the landscape, pick up on the early signals and cues that matter, and keep our North Star in mind. Where are we heading, and where do we want to be? Where do we want to be with that specific technologies? What follows are my specific observations, and they're not necessarily complete, but I look at certain cues and the possible dynamics that will determine what happens next. I will slice my story in 3 parts, matching the basic dynamics of the media business model. Because if you strip it down to its bare essence, it's about a value exchange of media makers and audiences. Media offers content and services that meets the needs and the behaviors of audiences. And somewhere along that process, the values is captured back through advertising, through subscriptions, or even social value if you're a public service media. And we'll look at how that very basic model might be impacted by the rapid acceleration of AI. I'll talk about the who and the how of AI-powered media creation, the new dynamics of distribution and audience expectations, and the power shift in the business model. So let's dive in. What happens when suddenly everyone has creative superpowers. Because we have been talking here about news media, but actually everybody's making content, and everybody's kind of competing for attention, and it's not just professional media makers who have these tools in their hands. Because that's, in my view, the real shift. Not so much the incredible improvement of AI, and it has improved incredibly the last few months, but the fact that the technology became visible and usable by everyone. AI is not just longer hidden art that's used by data scientists who know how to play with it. It has become a pencil in everyone's box. Suddenly, everyone is able to make everything, with text as their only tool. English is the new paint, it's the new ink, it's the new programming language. The sales pitch is text to anything. Blog posts, social media, images, video, even rap music, coding your own website. And actually, this changes a bit the nature of creation and who can be a creator. Suddenly, the craft of drawing and composing are in the hands of every user. No need to learn all the specific settings and all the brushes of a specific composing tool or all the languages to code. And of course, it's not entirely true. You still need to have these skills. But the promise is there, and the results are tangible enough for people to trial and error their ways towards an acceptable output. So generative AI gives us all, and gives all the audience as well, superpowers. It lets them skip steps in the creation process that are boring and tedious. It's in its most extreme form, the creation process actually completely disappears. It's skipped, and raw data becomes generated input or output. Such drastic, I'm going a bit too quick, I think. Here. Such drastic automation doesn't always bring the most or the greatest value. Instead of simply replacing your original process, we should question its effectiveness and consider new possibilities. And at MediaHuis, that's certainly what we do. We try to look at with three distinctive lenses at how we might apply AI in our newsroom. There is the obvious one, automate certain tasks. Augmenting is about adding that layer of intelligence and then looking how we might rethink and reinvent certain of our processes. As I said, automate is the obvious level. You look at all the stages of your workflow and identify friction and pain points, as well as opportunities to scale to boost productivity. Where can you automate repetitive tasks that are taking up resources? And where can you scale value to new channels and new audiences? I think we just heard it as well. It's a way to scale something in a local community to much more people and being able to translate that to much more communities. In MediaHuis, a good example is our use of transcription within a CMS, where before you took a lot of time to really come back from an interview and transcribe that. Now this can be done automatically, saving a lot of time and resources. The next level is augmenting. Rather than replacing existing work, the real value of AI is, I think as well, is adding that extra layer of intelligence on top of existing output. The human plus the machine equals 3. You come up with something additional. And we've heard it as well, and it's also something that we are looking into, is headline generation and headline prediction. Rather than a journalist trying to come up with different headlines for all the different channels, we have an AI that really looks into what are possible headlines, predict the engagement rate and predict the conversion rate of these different headlines, and also come up with different variations for different channels. Finally, we also need to push the boundaries and ask ourselves, how can AI unlock truly new ways to create and deliver value? And I already think that these conversational news bots that we see now are a good example. Rather than just reading an article, you start to have a conversation with the article. You start to be able to question a text. That's a new way of delivering media. So what are some of the secondary effects? First of all, it levels the playing field. It levels the professional playing field, creative skills become super distributed, and it raises the bar for real journalistic output. You will have to put in journalistic effort, own thoughts, unconventional creativity to raise above what's generated by AI. AI is also dramatically changing, or might dramatically change how quickly the news cycle will go, because the packing and the gathering of news will be accelerated, and this will lead to faster news cycles. Working along AI will be the new normal, but it's not a given. It will require awareness and consideration for both the opportunities and the limitations of AI. Generative AI might feel like a wingsuit, but it's far from reliable, and we already heard it from a lot of people. You think you have superpowers, but you quickly will crash into the wall. It introduces multiple points of failure and friction in the workflow. As a language tool, it misses the critical ability to judge facts and understand context, and it's very prone to fabricate misinformation, the so-called hallucinations. Image and video generation, for those who already have experimented with it, are very hard to steer and to replicate, and they work on questionable IP. And connecting external AI services to existing workflows might also expose your organization to novel and far-reaching security issues, like malicious prompt injections to offload data and hack your systems. So a few possible evolutions. It's always hard to predict the future, but I also wanted to look a bit further to some of the impacts that things that still might impact the content creation. First of all, prompt engineering. We have seen incredible examples here, but I honestly hope for all of us that this is not the end stage. New user interfaces and different input methods like voice, visual, touch-based interfaces, AI-assisted prompting, where actually the prompting itself is being prepared by an AI, or intent prediction, like the AI can become smarter in predicting the kind of intent that you have with your prompt and replace actually that whole prompting sequence. So it will minimize or maybe even eliminate the need to prompt, or at least to have these very elaborate prompts. AI will get connected and talk to each other. Tasks will be chained and replace full workflows. AutoGPT is an early example of these language models that can work together, and they have access to a memory, and they can formulate autonomous tasks. You set a goal, and AI will figure out the different steps that need to be taken and then execute them. And for those who are following that, this quickly derails. It's far from effective at this moment, but it starts to point to and indicate a certain potential of how AI systems can not just have one narrow task, but be changed and replace a full workflow. Computational journalism is very old, but I think it will grow now because more news will move straight from data to content and to audiences, skipping that production process. Finally, it's also been mentioned, this will make a number of tasks obsolete and put pressure on jobs and people. But the net impact will probably not be negative, as new skills and roles will be needed to operate and orchestrate AI in the newsroom. And you already see the forward-looking organizations around us are already putting out a lot of job descriptions for new roles that were not there a few years ago. So let's now turn to the distribution side of things, where scale becomes a challenge rather than an opportunity. Because we have heard about scaling, but it is a real challenge, I think. AI systems unlock scale. Suddenly, individual makers and small newsrooms can expand their coverage, serve more people, and cater to more needs than they would be ever able to do without AI. The old model was make one and try to distribute to as many channels as there were. The new one is you create endlessly, and then you distribute infinitely and optimize personal for every channel and for every person optimized. Of course, in reality, if you remove any obstacle to content production, it will lead to exponential content production. It will lead to content farming that blows up. A recent NewsGuard report already proves that the bots are out there and they're chasing scales and they're chasing clicks. It's like foam particles that come out of like a beanbag, and you've opened it in your living room and it sticks everywhere. That's the kind of feeling what I have when I see what's currently happening with generative AI. So what are the consequences here? Generating content at scale will be easier than ever, but hardly have any value because everybody can generate content endlessly. So it will happen, everybody will be able to do this. So undifferentiated content will become data for the machines, I think. Efficacy, not efficiency, will be the new mode. Actually making sure you reach the right people at the right place with the appropriate format and the content is what will make the difference, not so much the volume or the efficiency of your production process. And that requires connected data and user insights and an infrastructure setup that is able to deliver personalization at scale. And only a few media companies, I think, are currently ready to do this and have the architectural clarity to pull this off. In a world of commoditized distribution, I think differentiation and uniqueness in offer will be more important than ever. Curation by brands will also become more important to cut through the noise. Here's, well, there's a few possible evolutions that may occur. First of all, as we heard that the exponential scale, the bland middle of the internet, what I call a kind of middle gray, will only grow. The generated, undifferentiated content bubble will only grow and expand. And only the top voices and the brands that matter, that have a relationship, that have an identity in the middle, will somehow be able to stand out, as well as those that have close community connections, that are in their niche, that have direct connections. They will be able to monetize the attention of the user. The supply of this information will soon be infinite, and that's not my quote. It's actually from René Di Resta of the Stanford Internet Observatory, and she estimates that by 2025, not so long anymore, 90% of the internet will be AI generated. New technologies to prove origin and trustworthiness will therefore also become more important, like this example by Adobe. Allowing to check content if it's generated or not, and it actually travels along with the image. I like this as well. Human journalism will become a premium product and perhaps even a label. And this is a concept work, it's not yet existing, by designer William House, but I like the fact that he made human product, the kind of human made as a label for products. Wondering which company will first implement this. This leads us to the third chapter and the third part, of course, of the whole media ecosystem, and that is with this shift in creation and in distribution, the battle for the new value chain will center around data and interfaces. Because in an AI-first news landscape, the creation and production stage of the process is compressed. We even skip it at some points, or it might disappear. In this new value chain, the endpoints become even more important than they already are. The raw data, IP, and talent on the one side, and the interface and the relationship with the audience on the other side. In this example, you can see how OpenAI has worked its way up to the value chain, closer to the consumer, in order to capture more data that feeds back in their model and also allows them to monetize that relationship. Current conversational engines, as you know, have been trained on large amounts of data, and in large part also on our data, on news data, as we've learned from a recent Washington Post article. But rather than linking back, original content is transformed and served as answers to questions in chat interfaces. And this is an example of a premium article of the Standard, our newspaper, that's surfaced by Bing, and there's a link there, but nobody will click that link. You know, they've already had the summary and that article in the summary. So publishers will be pushing for compensation, but it's hard to predict how long that will take, if that will be successful at all, and they will face a choice. They can try to fight big tech companies with lawsuits or by pushing for novel policy, or they can become providers of data, allowing their content to be scraped in return for attribution, in return for a partnership fee that they might try to get out of it. But as content production gets to infinite scale, the power to ask for revenue splits will weaken. You know, it's the law of supply and demand. If there's more supply, it's really hard to negotiate for a better price. Or they can try to stand out and unlock their own thinking and their own data. Already a few companies are pursuing own fine-tuned models as a new product. Bloomberg GPT, which you might have heard of, is a new model for financial information, and of course they had a really big team behind it, and it's an incredible large model. But there's also smaller examples, like NPR is turning their radio archive into a conversational database. Not yet there, but it is an interesting experiment. And NRC, our own newspaper in the Netherlands, is actually using synthesized voices of our own journalists. So we want to claim and own our own voices and have a model for our own text-to-speech. But building an own model will not work for everyone. We did an experiment at the Standard not so long ago, actually a week ago, trying to build a very narrow model, including data on top of GPT 3.5 to replicate the writing style of one of our tech columnists. And it didn't really work. Somehow you could feel it was this journalist, but the data set was just too narrow. And you quickly run to a few constraints when you have such a narrow data set. It feels like completeness, accuracy, and also understandability are a kind of impossible triangle that if you want to be complete here, it's very hard to be accurate, and if you want to be accurate, it's very hard to be complete. Certainly if you have a very narrow data set. So let's turn to the other battle in the value chain, which is about the interface. Companies, as you know, with direct access to the audience, own the relationship and therefore have the biggest opportunity to leverage that relationship as a business. For the last 10 years, 3 interfaces reigned the internet. That was the web, it was the homepage, it was search, and it was social media. And those 3 are possibly being disrupted, potentially being disrupted by the rise of conversational bots and their new interfaces. Because let's admit, you like to go through all these links to see if they answer your question, or do you just like to have an answer on your question? And providers of these foundational models, like OpenAI and Microsoft with their interfaces, ChatGPT and Bing, are clearly trying to integrate further forwards. By introducing new functionalities and plugins, they enable any action within that new interface. Book a travel, make an image, analyze data, get cooking instructions. It's a one-size-all destination that they're trying to build. And if your audience is not getting lost there, they might take the control over the interface and the experience themselves. There's a whole new world of plugins that are being launched where people are invited to take back their control of the attention time and the experience that you are trying to deliver to them. Because they either have a very specific job to be done, or they want to have an immersive story experience. And rather than reading the whole article on your homepage in your design, they just skip away the design, strip away the design, summarize what they want to know, and go directly to what they're trying to achieve. And new media players like Artifact, that's actually an aggregator, are trying to preempt this behavior by offering readers the options to customize the news inside their app. So they aggregate an article, and Artifact will deliver the summary on top of it, and you can see, you can even have an emoji summary of your article. So it's not necessarily the kind of experience that you had in mind when creating your output. Again, some secondary effects. First of all, the economy of the web, will it be the death of the link? I don't think so, but the economy of the web was built around the link, and it's unclear how much of that economy will be eaten by content that is surfaced rather than linked to. There might be a split between hard news and service content. It might be pulled away in different channels and different interfaces because they serve a different user need, and they are somehow in a different modality. Hard news will evolve more to real-time and live, while services and service content can easily be surfaced by these conversational bots. News organizations will need to decide if they want to partner or compete with large language models and big tech, and they will have to shape their strategic thinking around that. Do they want to become providers of data, or do they want to guard the gates? And if they want to guard the gates, then they better start to build a team to guard the gates. That means you will have to organize yourself to protect your IP, to unlock the value of your archives, and this will require new ways to track and monitor original content across the web and across these bots, and also push for new copyright protection laws. Here as well, a few possible evolutions. One of them, I'm certainly not the biggest expert, but I'm kind of monitoring the field. We all know that the evolution so far has been large language models only becoming bigger, only becoming more expensive to run, billions of parameters, huge infrastructure. But the last few months, we have seen much smaller models that have been able to come very close, not good enough, but very close to competing with these big models. And even OpenAI's CEO, Sam Altman, is now saying that the future might not be in an even bigger model. The most competitive models will be the ones that iterate more quickly and that can actually adapt more quickly. And in that sense, size is not necessarily an advantage if you want to iterate quickly. So the market might split up in few ways, and there's like 4 flavors here in 2 big buckets. A small number of huge foundational models that can only be run and be maintained by big tech. Publishers are either data sources there, or they have a custom integration and a custom model that infuse their own data on top of these huge models. Or you have an infinite number of smaller, more specific models that are very narrow, very focused, and that cater to specific needs and that are built on proprietary data. And either publishers have, again, their own interface on such a very small or narrow model, or there comes an aggregator that aggregates these different small models and brings them like this to an audience. Another thing that might happen, and I'm looking at Apple to see what they will do, because they have the whole value chain from the input to the technology and the chipset until the final user. Future interfaces might become more liquid. Rather than several specific UIs for specific applications, you might have one interface that is just generated for purpose, for the kind of content and the kind of experience that you're looking for. I also think that voice might regain a seat at the table. We have all given up on voice on Google Home and Alexa. They didn't really work because they needed to have this kind of logic tree things. But now with the language models that have become so much better, I think voice will return. And it's clear it will make a comeback in the home, in the car, in our phones, in every position where actually a conversation with your voice is just a better alternative. Finally, I'm almost done. I think then afterwards you can go outside, enjoy the sun and drinks. I could go on. There's many more dimensions, but I'll think that will be covered tomorrow as well. Wanted to give a few key takeaways. Already a few people said it. Start with the why. It's not because it's possible with AI that it's also valuable. Have a clear editorial and ethical framework to guide you. Look for friction. I always think if you can remove friction, that's a really good starting point. So remove friction in your process, in your service, in your products. Orchestrate and unlock your knowledge. Deepen your own moat. What kind of data can you use and can you use to defend yourself against others? Be wild and use your imagination as well. Consider it as intelligent Lego. Delight your audience with something new, something transformative. Look at how you can own more of the value chain, either at the beginning from the data or at the end at the interface and the access point. And then finally, broaden your pool of talent. You will need it, and invite your audience and involve your audience to get feedback. Do they like actually what you're doing with AI? Is that something that they are looking for? That's it.
Did I tell you he was awesome? Was he awesome?
Thanks.
Okay, actually, we don't have time for questions.
Well,
let's take two. Let's take 2 or 3 quick questions anyway, because if you I have 10, but I won't post any of them. Just if you have 1, 2. Okay, then we'll
drinks out there.
Shout it, and I will pass it on.
How does this? Hello, hi. My name is Birgir. I'm from Rúv in Iceland. How does this all fit in with the whole context of, like in the fake news era in the content creation of the world? How can we, where do we find the context so people can't like, okay, this is just, yeah.
May I take your question and rephrase it?
This is not really generated.
I think I kind of capture what you're looking into, but I really think for news organizations that have a trusted brand, this is a huge opportunity because there will be only more disinformation out there, and actually making sure that you bank on the trust that you have and that you create that trusted destination in a way that delivers value and takes into account the possibilities of these new technologies will give you a huge advantage. So I think we shouldn't be afraid of more disinformation. Is the challenge we will have to work, but we are in a good position because we have trusted brands.
I'll pose the most important question then. Are you staying for dinner?
I'm certainly staying for dinner and for drinks. So.
And for drinks, okay.
I
It'll
need
be
one.
a nice evening. Okay, thank you, Ezra.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure.